guests today. Everyone showed up. That's great. Welcome, everybody. Hello, Heather. Hello, Dr. V. Hello, John.
Howdy, howdy.
It is Social Tuesday. And as always, you guys get to run this show. And we can look at whatever you want to look at and talk about whatever you want to look at. That almost always ends up being something around social media. I was just telling John before we went live that a campaign that I had run on LinkedIn, which is sort of an outreach campaign, ended up netting 300 new first level connections. I already had, a few hundred, but 300 new first level connections who are fractional CMOs. That was who I was doing the outreach to.
Tell us about the campaign.
What's that?
Tell us about the campaign. What does the campaign look like on LinkedIn for you?
For this one, I used Meet Alfred, and I wrote a sequence of 3, the initial just short outreach message, and then 2 follow-ups that provided PDF booklets that I wrote specifically for this market. One was about, sort of a marketing concepts and interesting tidbits like that for fractional CMOs. And then the second one was specifically around fractional CMOs and how they can sell more or, get more engagements.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
So yeah, it worked out really well. Now I have, 300 more people because I had never done a campaign for fractional CMOs before. So now the bulk of my first level connections for, fractional CMOs are people from this campaign. They've it's tipped over into the majority.
Nice. And so you're using the paid LinkedIn, is it called their Sales Navigator?
No.
What is it?
Nope.
How'd you source them then? That was the Alfred?
That was Meet Alfred. All of these tools do the same thing. They let you run a search and then pull all those people's profiles, their LinkedIn public profiles, into sort of like a table, and then it cycles through the table a certain number per day.
Gotcha.
And then after a certain number of days, if they connect, then it will send them a second message. And if they connect, if they connect, it sends them the second message. A certain number of days after that, it'll send them a third message. I kept it the 3.
Yeah. Is this working as an automation, like a active campaign automation?
It's like an email campaign, except through LinkedIn. It's my first ever LinkedIn campaign. Cool. The conversion rate on it was 35. What was I saying, John? The conversion rate was, and in these terms, a conversion rate is how many people were sent invitations and then accepted the invitation.
Mm-hmm.
The conversion rate was 35.2%.
It's extraordinary.
Nice.
With the simplest possible invitation I've ever written anyone ever, because it gives you a lot of options. You can personalize it and all this kind of stuff. But it was just very simply, hi, first name. Looks like we have similar connections. Let's connect, smiley face. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
The more I've seen lately of other friends writing stuff, the simpler, the better.
Yeah. And then while most of the replies, when people reply to the thread, anything beyond just connecting, clearly a lot of them just, they picked whatever automated suggested reply LinkedIn threw up in the little chat box, which is fine, right? But about a dozen or so, especially in the earliest days, about a dozen or so made a point of writing back and saying, hey, this was really interesting read, and thanks for not trying to pitch me right out of the gate.
Yep.
Because I haven't pitched anyone yet about anything.
Right. Well, I think that 35% conversion rate, there's a couple of things. It's that you're really drilled down in who you're talking to, so you know who you're talking to, so you can figure out what's of value to them, and you can provide it to them. Yeah. And that you didn't do a sales pitch, that you kept it simple. And then, I don't know if Meet Alfred will do this, but there's just a huge percentage of people who are on LinkedIn who are not active on LinkedIn. So I don't know if it filters for people who have posted recently or logged in recently or anything along those lines, because there's just a huge portion of people who don't tune in.
Yeah. I didn't see any of those options when I put together the campaign. It does, of course, automatically withdraw an invitation after. You can set how many days you want to sort of leave that there. You do not want hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of unreplied to network invitations in your LinkedIn queue. Right. You'll end up in LinkedIn jail or get a demerit for that, or however it is they do it.
But the good thing is LinkedIn does show you who looked you up. Or
Yes.
we tried to send you a request.
Yeah, my profile views are like astronomically higher, like 1,000% higher than normal over the last month or so. Yeah. And then 135 people replied. So out of just under 1,000 people that were a part of the campaign, 342 became connections, and 135 of them actually wrote back. And I have conversations. I have meetings every day with fractional CMOs now. So I can definitely, for the price, because I didn't even buy like the cheaper, pay for it for a year and get 4 months free thing. I just pay month to month. $49, totally worth it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
$49 and a little bit of copywriting, and that's all. And and a couple of lead magnets, which I would have written anyway. And then I think I just said lead maggot instead of lead magnet. We'll have
the lead magnet is.
We'll have the
magnet
producer roll
alpha.
back the tape after and check that out.
Yeah, it's
But
the alpha maggot.
Yeah, but I mean, these are all concepts and stuff that I talk about all the time. I just hadn't put it into like a written format. It was a nice graphical written format for those folks. But I mean, I can't go wrong. I can't.
No.
I have no complaints about this.
Right.
And
Well,
it did, however. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you can always subscribe for a period of time until your pipeline is full, and then cancel the subscription and resubscribe down the road.
Yeah. The next step, of course, is if I want to move these folks if I want to move the conversation off of LinkedIn, then that's another campaign or some other tool that will like find out what folks' work address is, and then now I've got omni-channel going.
Yeah.
Right. Now, have you figured out like what your cost of lead acquisition is, including the cost of the software?
Depends on if I'm going to count my own time for writing the lead magnets.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
Yeah,
right?
You can.
So if I was gonna do that, then it's probably came out to something like, I don't know, 135 people. It took me probably no more than 5 hours for both lead magnets total. And so, that's 750, 800. I probably spent $1,000.
I was going to say,
I probably spent $1,000 for 135 replies, right? Because not everyone who connected to me replied,
right?
But yeah.
So I'm interested in the title that you have for today's live, which is "What if you don't like dealing with social media?" I know you said we were in charge, but with a title like that, you gotta start us off with that, which I think is a really, really interesting question. And it's
the major premise was set by you.
Yeah.
Right. So there are two ways to sort of tackle social media if you have your own business and you're using it to sort of grow your business, right? One is you treat it as a content marketing platform, and you're sort of sharing and writing your blog posts on LinkedIn or posting or doing stuff on Instagram or whatever. And then there's using it as a sales tool. But some companies just like, they'll plant a flag, if you know the term, plant a flag. Like you create the account and just have it there so no one else can get your name. But we see this all the time, right? People just plant a flag. We go in, how many posts do they have? Like, I don't know, 4 in the last 3 years. So last time we talked about this, we talked about like what a hypothetical person who was not me, but could have been construed as being me, but technically was not me, hypothetically, would do on that sort of approach, or like, what part of this should be content marketing? What part of it should be like outbound sales and prospecting and that kind of stuff, and what platforms to focus on. And the consensus there was on LinkedIn. And then secondary was Facebook/Instagram. Like you just treat them as one thing, Facebook, Instagram. But then, a lot of people, they just plant a flag and they never do anything. So what, if anything, if you've been dormant for a while, you haven't built an audience, you don't have any followers there. By the way, the other thing, it gets really crazy. I just want to mention one more thing. Speaking of followers and stuff, if I go to my network on LinkedIn and look at it, I have 5,900 and that's weird. 97. So I'm 3 shy of 6,000 first level connections on LinkedIn, which is 100 times my number of Facebook friends.
Yeah, how often are you putting content out on Facebook? Does this stream to your?
Almost
Facebook
never.
as well?
I almost never use Facebook. Until last week, I never even really considered it as a place to do anything other than this show goes to Facebook every time we do it. So there's like whatever 50, 60 plus videos now posted on LinkedIn, on Facebook from this show. But what if you don't like dealing with social media?
Well, you got to find another way to get customers, to get clients. There's there's a lot of ways to do it. And what do your connections look like? Are you presenting? Are you doing other kinds of outreach? Are you, depending on what your target market is, do they have a professional association? Can you go that route? Like there's a lot of other ways to go. I think a lot of people get attracted to social media because they imagine that they will scale. But then they don't do the work to scale, but it's that carrot, that like magical, if I just post something and it goes viral, then my whole life will be easy and money will rain down on me. I mean, we don't say that in our heads, but I think that little fantasy is out there. And anytime that happens to somebody, we neglect the 10 years of hard work that came before it and just focus on the day the money rained down. So I think there's a little bit of that appeal. I've run into so many people who are like, well, I have to be on social media. And I'm like, okay, well, which channel and why? And they're like, I have to be on all the channels all the time. And I'm like, what? So there's a little bit of that, like, if I do social media right, the money will rain down.
Well, there goes that. I was just thinking of it this morning.
By the way, you're at $59.98 now, Dean. I just checked. So somebody either who's watching or
no,
by
actually,
the end of this, you'll be at
I'm
6.
pretty sure it's $59.97 because it was that. If you notice, I had like a slight hesitation before reading the number. It said $59.98, and I refreshed, and it now says $59.97.
Oh, they're probably watching this show, and then
so either based on what cloud server I hit, the database hasn't been updated yet, or someone just like disconnected me. Someone of the nearly 6,000 I'm connected to just.
I'm still at 59. Interesting.
Yeah, the more that I think about social media, the more I realize that most people that we talk to when we first get started with them, they just have no real clear idea what their end in mind is. And so if they don't have that end in mind, they just really don't know where to go with it, or how to get started, or what my call to action is going to be, or series of them will be as I move along. And so I don't know, that's like one of the biggest problems that we see.
Yeah, well, I mean, starting, if you're straight up, I am big on jump in and just start doing it, right? Like do that, but that's not the end. That's the beginning. That's what is this social media channel? What do other people post? What do posts look like? What does interaction look like, right? I'm big on dive in immediately. There are things you can only learn by experience and by being in there. But if that is step one. That is step one. And then you can have a more educated conversation about what strategy might look like. Because you'll be like, I can never write a tweet, like screw tweets. Like that's not me. I'll never be able to do that. Too short a form or whatever. You learn kind of some of those basic things. And then you can have a more informed conversation about strategy and knowing if you're the content provider, what's going to be content you can provide and are willing to spend the time to do.
And of course, if you don't want to be on social media, there are other like platforms.
I mean, you could argue, for example, like you could be on Pinterest. God only knows why, but some people are actually. Like Neil Schaefer, he's got tons of social media marketing tips and things on Pinterest, which does give him some juice. And but Pinterest really is a visual search engine, not truly social media.
Right. So, and then email lists. Some people just put all their effort into
email
and growing an email list.
But you've got
podcasts are nice at the top of the funnel too.
That's true. But you have to cultivate those emails somewhere, unless you're going to be doing solo ads in other people's emails, or you're going to be renting lists, or God knows what. And those can be super expensive.
Oh yeah.
Have any of you ever advertised on social media? Facebook ads, LinkedIn ads?
Most assuredly.
Yeah. What did you advertise, and what did it cost you, and what did you get?
I've had kind of mixed results. We tried doing some new ads lately, and they weren't quite as effective as.
That's for what? Like, what is you're trying to attract people to do?
It's for an opt-in that we have on video.
It's to download a video cheat sheet.
Yep, sure, video cheat
Oh,
sheet.
okay. So it's a lead magnet, like a traditional
Yeah.
kind of lead magnet.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
A one
And
pager. I mean, yeah.
we had a comment from Kat that talked about Pinterest being a search engine, which I think both Pinterest is a search
Yeah.
engine and is overlooked all of the time, depending on what you're selling.
Yep.
And then YouTube is the second largest search engine ever. So
Mhm.
I didn't, just kind of had one day where I saw that and I was like, yeah, I better put something out there. Like I
Yeah.
better start thinking about that long term on what
Yes.
that looks like.
Do
So
you
I think,
connect your YouTube channel to this show?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good. So you're
but
getting
it's
something there.
it's like your Facebook right now. It's like
Yeah.
things are being sent there regularly.
Yeah,
Attention is
exactly.
not currently
Mhm.
paid.
Right.
But it's because it's a click of a button, right? Now I'll have a library of things, and when I'm ready
Yeah.
and can put the time into it, I can jump in. And so I think looking at some of these other outlets, like Kat said, Pinterest, and then you can look at things like Reddit and some of these community forums that
Yeah.
have like a ton of traffic, right? That's sort of social media-ish, but it's just not the same kind of thing. I think the question is, if you don't want to do social media, what does the top of your funnel look like?
Right.
Mhm.
And I think that's the big question.
How are
There
you
other
getting
places
people
to
into
go.
there? Yeah.
And where is your audience? Because you might not like social media, but if everybody that you want to work with is there,
Yeah.
then you're going to have to get really crafty to not be there.
Well, and
to,
we
to
see,
find them and to connect with them.
and with John, our mutual project, John and I, we see, for example, RV Business Builders. So for the RVers, they're on there in multiple Facebook groups to the
Mhm.
tune of 28,000. One, John was telling me that the
One's
Family Motor Coach
130,000.
Association, was
Yes.
12 million members or something like that. And so these people do
No,
hang
it's
out
probably
there
12 million total, but I think
total, but not on
I
Facebook.
think the association, like my number on my vehicle right now is like 4 million something. So there's over 4 million people, and I've been involved for 4 years. So they're probably like 8 or 10 million now.
So as much as you may not like social media, Dean, you're correct about the idea that your potential customers may be there, even though you may not have that as a preference. I did that in practice years ago. I recognized that the ads that I put out, the yellow pages, the coupons and everything, I wouldn't respond to those, but my potential patients did.
Mhm.
And so the important thing is to recognize most of the time that you are not your market.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And most people don't like that. I mean, if I like this, of course, everybody else is going to like this.
Well, and
Not
there's something
true.
to be said about whether or not you like
Mhm.
social media itself and whether or not you like connecting with your audience. So most people who don't like social media still want to connect with their audience, and so they can learn to like social media if they use it differently and use it as a connection tool. So if you think I just post all the time and nothing happens, what kind of interaction are you doing? And so most of the folks that I work with, they are avid readers and they love new information. It's like, well, are you following some of those thought leaders and posting there? Because reading their stuff is usually kind of fun because they're somebody you already like and you've read their book and so on and so forth. And then, what is it like talking to people who are in your target market at all, even if they're not ready to buy or anything like that, right? Having a conversation about the work that you do is usually pretty fun for people. So if
Yeah.
you're not having conversations, no wonder you don't like social media.
Well-
all you're doing is posting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the conversations, that is the key. I mean, if you're
Yes.
able to outreach with conversations, the thing that I found works for me, and maybe most people don't do this, is I would regularly comment either in live streams or other people's posts. And suddenly I've been doing more of it lately, and I'm connecting with people. Like Mari Smith connected with me just the other day. I've been following her for years, and now, we've been doing a banter back and forth for about 18 months on some of her live streams. And I think I've penetrated this particular influencer's consciousness such that she's now following all my stuff.
Yeah.
And the same thing is true of somebody, I can't remember Jamie's last name, but I found him on TikTok. And you can comment, of course, on TikTok videos, and that resulted in private messaging back and forth. He followed me, I followed him back, and we've been going back and forth, and we're about to set up a Zoom call within the next week or so. So I think that's, it's the commenting, and Heather, you're totally right. It's the conversation. You need the back and forth. And of course, not being the a-hole at the party who suddenly, shows up and starts peddling his insurance policies.
Right.
So.
Right. And there's so much to learn from conversation. So if you have this idea, if you have that magical money's going to rain down moment in the back of your head, and when you join and when you do outreach in social media, it becomes a sales pitch. It becomes a what's in it for me, not what can I learn from interacting with my target market or other thought leaders in my field. And once you take it as part of your Con Ed and part of your staying in touch with your audience and knowing what language they're using, what they're thinking, what their pain points are, all that good stuff, it becomes a different kind of experience.
Mhm.
And don't overlook phone calls. If you really hate social media, call people. And I think that's one of the things that has gone by the wayside over the last, I'd say, 5-10 years or so. People are adverse to telephone calls.
Oh, you know what? Something we haven't talked about
Yeah.
that used to be kind of the way to do this. If you think of social media as going to a place where your audience might be and, sharing content, is public speaking,
Hmm.
which we haven't talked
Presentations
about
of
yet.
all kinds are great top of funnel. And like I said, like if there's a professional association or a group, something like that, that's great top of funnel. And you can lead. Typically, I would recommend to my folks have a lead magnet that specifically for that group, and that puts them on your email list and then in your nurture sequence, and you can skip the social media piece
Or
of that.
go to live events, because live events are becoming more prevalent and more popular. And you don't necessarily have to rent a booth at a convention or a summit. You can just show up in the lobby and start connecting with people if you're interested in connecting with those people, colleagues or contemporaries.
Right.
It's been a long time since I thought about like doing outreach to do more public speaking.
Yeah.
I guess.
Well, it's easier than ever because in person is great, but virtual is really at everyone's fingertips for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't match the deals at the bar.
It's true, but you know what? You can use your own bar, which is always open.
Always open.
Deals at the bar? What?
Well, because people, some of the best conversations at any event that I've been to, whether it's in Vegas or Manhattan or whatever, is after the keynote speakers are done and after a session is out and you're meeting somebody, say 4 or 5, 10 o'clock at night at the bar, that's where you really start to connect with people and have these deep conversations that will create long-lasting friendships as well as collaborative efforts.
Yeah, social lubricant. A lot of people are really uncomfortable with speaking. I've gone to a bunch of virtual events where they'll do breakout rooms and people will just not show up to that. So I really
or they're completely silent during the entire breakout room.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, it's a skill, right? It's a skill to be able to start and have a conversation with a stranger. And so I've gone to a bunch of those because I have practiced, because I was shy growing up and was like, I'm not going to be able to function in the world if I don't learn this skill. Mm-hmm. So I go to all of them, of course, because that's why I'm at an event and the whole thing. And there's just nobody there. A couple of different times I've just sat there with the organizer and been like, yeah, people don't do this, do they? Like, they just don't. And they're coming to a virtual conference, so they don't have to interact. However, it's not that they don't want to interact. It's that they're really uncomfortable with it. And face-to-face is difficult. But if you reach out virtually, so chats and, in other ways like that, I think there's a welcomeness to that for sure. And it helps them feel engaged with the conference itself. But to get people to put their face out there and meet with somebody, I mean, that makes it high on a lot of people's phobia lists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was extraordinarily shy as a kid. I mean, painfully so. I wouldn't even ask questions in classes and stuff. And it was the process really of doing videos live. Actually, know what it really was. I was always taught, don't talk to strangers, stranger danger, even way back in the 60s or so. And the problem is when I opened my practice and hung up my shingle, every new patient was a stranger. So talk about cognitive dissonance. You had to get over it because otherwise you're out of business. So
right.
But when you're in that setting, so my parents both are in the medical profession and are total introverts and they can talk to strangers. Okay. They've had enough years on the planet, but you are we're in roles and it's really clear what we're going to talk about. And you have all the knowledge because you're the practitioner, right? And that other person is there and they have, it's not their office. It's not something they do 1,000 times a day.
Right.
So it's fantastic. And it starts to break that ice. But I think putting two people on equal footing, not knowing what to say, not knowing what to do is a different situation.
Yeah. I mean, I'll give you the most interesting example. Prior to opening my practice many years ago, I had a practice management consultant who basically had me go out door to door in the neighborhood, introducing myself to people. And I had never done door to door sales. I didn't like candy sales or all these other things that they make you do in grade school and high school. And I think that was the most painful experience was, having a door slammed in your face and things like that. But out of that pain grew the notion that maybe, it's a numbers game and X number of people are going to actually carry on a conversation with me. And so that experience actually made everything else easy, especially, virtual events and everything else like that. Although I will tell you that the whole concept of doing video was alien to me, such that because my wife said, she looked at some of my videos where I would do 30, 35 takes for a single, 8-minute video. And she says, you really suck on video. And so it was through doing live streams, and particularly live streams with John starting back in March of 2020, that got me out of that horrific kind of frozen, inanimate type of, I'm wearing my white coat and I got my stethoscope on.
Yeah.
That's the most inauthentic, horrible, bland, brand X type of thing you can imagine, because there's no differentiation. If you can't show your personality, and I think a lot of people are just afraid to be vulnerable, to be able to show who they are and to make a mistake. And I make tons of mistakes now. And Heather's right. You just have to play on social media before you start making some grandiose plan.
Right.
Yeah. Most people just don't, we just don't think people have an interest in what we have to say. And it's totally false. It's just stuck in here someplace. Because they do. They're totally interested in what you have to say. There's always some common ground you'll find with different people.
Well, that's the thing about the internet, right? You don't need to find a deep audience. You just need to find, you can have a very thin audience because it's spread all over the world.
But it's always good to go deep. Go deep, then go wide, maybe.
There you go. So I guess there are no new things to do. Oh, wait, that's not true. There is sort of one new thing to do, although it's so new, I'm not sure anyone can make use of it yet. I was going to say, all the stuff about, okay, if you don't want to be on social media or invest in it, all of those methods were old methods, right? Public speaking, phone calls, door-to-door, and all that kind of stuff. And then probably the newest one is just setting up some sort of presence in the metaverse. But that's so new that, no one really even knows the rules.
That's Web 3. Right now we're on Web 2.5. We're kind of just dipping our toes into the metaverse.
Yeah.
So say what you mean when you talk about metaverse and Web 3. Because I've read so much on it and nobody can explain it to me. You have 3 minutes.
But imagine that we just have online meeting places where to not talk about the technology and how it's distributed and why you're sort of looking at an edge computing infrastructure to make that at all usable. But you can essentially think of it as just an online meeting place, and no one is sort of set up the right. There used to be something called Second Life, if you remember what Second Life was.
Yeah.
And there are aspects of metaverse that are very, very, very similar to that, where people have meetings and they have, public events and stuff, that it's just everyone in the event is either wearing a VR setup at home, sitting at home if they're there in the event, their avatar is, or, in some cases they just have a flat avatar and they're using a screen and there's no actual VR there. But like I said, that's so new that it hasn't even really stabilized or become, there are no best practices yet for what or how to do anything in the metaverse.
Yeah, it's total experimentation right now.
So everything we have around social media and not using it is either quite old and has been around forever, or is so new that it's really not much of an option yet.
But social media basically is just, using media to be social with people and carry on conversations. So you just find the platform with which you're most comfortable, and then master that one before you start trying to be omnipresent, on 12 different channels.
Still at $59.97. So sometime in the next day or two,
today.
I'll hit 6,000.
I should unfollow you and then refollow you just to confuse.
There you go.
Cruel. That's cruel.
All right. Tomorrow's website Wednesday.
The best day of the week.
I'm going to let you guys pick for tomorrow. We can either do a topic or you can come armed with the URL. Or if anyone wants to submit their URL, then we can take a look at that and see and fix it in real time. And by fix, I do mean fix, because we've yet to find anything that we didn't fix. The only time we ever didn't fix something was last week, because we said we would focus only on headlines and subheadlines. And this website for that luxury brand digital marketing firm. What were they
Yeah.
called? Whatever they were called.
They were good.
Their headlines were good. The copy
Yeah.
needed work, but
Yeah.
I wasn't going to
Yeah.
break the rule and start
Yeah.
fixing the copy.
Yeah, that
Headline.
bouncing private jet was on.
Yeah,
It's
right.
worth seeing that replay.
Dean, what would happen if we took a look at your profile? When's the last time you looked at your profile? Do you look every day? Tweet.
Do I look every day at my LinkedIn profile?
Any of your profiles?
No.
Or your website?
His YouTube profile, that would be a good one.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. Was there any point in like going in to fix my own website? My website, while my social media profiles rarely change, my website changes quite a lot.
Yeah.
It's the main place where I show off copy.
And that's the place that you focus on. It's not your social profiles. So
Yeah. Like if you look at Way Creative right now, that headline that's a good headline.
it's way cool.
But every week or so, I come up with a new headline for there.
Oh, nice. I like it.
Wow.
All right. Well, I'm late for my next meeting.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks
We're
for
outta here.
coming around.
See you next time. Bye, everyone.